Hello and welcome to Things We Said Today, our weekly podcast about anything and everything to do with the Beatles, both as a group and as solo artists, past, present, and things to come. I'm Alan Kozin, the author of The Beatles from the Cavern to the Rooftop, and Got That Something, How the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand Changed Everything, and a writer about music and musicians for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and several other publications. And I'm joined by my three regular esteemed co-hosts, Ken Michaels, who you know as the host of the syndicated Beatles radio show Every Little Thing. Hey Ken, how you doing?
Hi Alan. Hi everyone.
And Steve Marinucci, probably the world's only full-time Beatles reporter at this point. You can read his work in Billboard.com and Access.com, which is AXS.com. And he's also the author of a book, Meet a Monkey, Davy Jones. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Alan. Hello, everyone.
And last but not least, Al Sussman, the executive editor of Beatle Fan magazine and author of the book Changin' Times, 101 Days That Shaped a Generation. And how are you doing, Al?
Hey, Alan, how are you? Hello there, everybody.
Okay. In a way, we are sort of heavily tilted towards Beatle Fan this episode. I in my really long self-credits, I didn't mention I'm also a contributing editor of Beatle Fan magazine, and our guest today, Rick Glover, who's been with us before, is a senior editor of Beatle Fan. He also is famously an important figure in the Fans on the Run group that travels around the world to see Paul McCartney's various shows here and there, and was just at Desert Trip. His write-up of Desert Trip is on Beatle Fan's Something New blog, and so you can catch up. By the time you can catch up with it, you'll have heard the show and we'll know pretty much what he had to say. But you should read it anyway. So, Rick, how you doing?
Hi, Alan. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back on again.
Okay, so. Was it in any way a difficult decision for you to decide to go to this? I think you prefer indoor concerts, isn't that the case?
Well, I do like the intimacy and the sound and the closeness of the indoor concerts, but an event like this with that lineup was just too much for one of the fans on the run to pass up.
Okay.
I'm a huge Who fan. They were one of my first real rock concerts that I went to see. Love Pink Floyd and all the spacey music that they play, and big Stones fan as well, and as Dylan too. So that was a lineup that I could not miss.
How about Neil Young?
Not much of a Neil Young.
Okay. Well, in a lineup like that, there's got to be one that you have time to go get dinner during.
Well, I have appreciation, but just not for my tastes.
Right. Okay. And you got some Neil Young in the Paul McCartney set anyway. So.
Yes, he did. He did come out and do a couple of treats with Paul's set, and that was thrilling. I'll admit that.
Mm-hmm. So, do you go to both weekends or just one of them?
No, I just went to the one. I've had some health issues in the last year or so that I just didn't want to try to. If I was afraid I would overdo it if I really did both weekends, but the one once in a lifetime experience was a treat to be able to participate in that.
Mm-hmm. And in which you went to the second weekend?
The first weekend.
The first weekend. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right then. So tell us, I guess, your reaction generally to Paul's set in particular. You said in your review that he was in good voice and everything.
Yeah. Yes, he sounded very, very good on most of the nights. He's got a couple of the spots in there that are going to be vocal challenges for him. But for the 90% of the show or 95% of the show, that was otherwise he was really, really sounding good. Sounded very, very happy to be there playing for that throng of people. We had good close seats, and the view from looking back into the crowd, it just seemed like an endless sea of people going back as far as you could see. So I know that was it was a thrill to be there for me and the audience, and I'm sure it was a thrill for the acts to look out at that and get that buzz from them. The band was playing real hot all night. Certainly throwing in a couple of surprises. A little more rock and roll with putting Day Tripper back in the set, and certainly the surprise of why don't we do it in the road? That was a nice treat.
Do you think there's also, I mean, obviously looking out at a crowd like that's gonna energize any group, but also knowing maybe that backstage are like all of his peers also listening to the set, So I mean that must have had an effect too.
Well, I'm sure that went through all their minds of looking down the set or the checklist of who all is going to be performing there. You don't want to be forgotten in that list. You want to bring your A game to whatever you're going to put on the stage there. And Paul being kind of bookended by the Stones and Roger Waters, Pink Floyd as the headliners on that thing, you're going to remember the opening or the first one for sure, and you're certainly going to remember the closing. So I think Paul felt that they had thrown down the gauntlet for him to bring his top show, and from my viewpoint, he certainly did.
Mm-hmm. What in the set do you think was really the highlight?
Something that worked really amazingly well was the acoustic bits in the center. I was surprised that a crowd that huge and potentially rowdy, unruly, would have slowed down or basically shut up and paid attention to when he was doing the podium songs, Blackbird and Here Today. He really had a silent audience to play to, and the little front porch skiffle bit that they do for Spite of All the Danger and I Love Her, that bit through there. They was really getting a great response from that. But the rock and roll, the Beatlemania songs, those were the ones that lit the crowd up. Of course, opening with, he did a pretty standard one-on-one tour set list.
Yeah.
With, opening with Hard Day's Night, of course, that you could see the waves of thing going back over the crowd when he was opening with that one. Can't Buy Me Love, nice and early in the set. Another, Hands in the Air song, and like I said, Day Tripper with little, the higher energy songs were certainly getting the crowd riled up.
Okay, so over to Ken.
Just judging from the 3 days, what was the age, the demographic like there? Was it mainly, people from, say, their 40s on up, or did you see any teenagers and possibly 20s and 30-year-olds?
I think the average age was probably a little closer to mine, in the 40 to 60 range. But there were lots of young folks there. There were some surprisingly young folks there that were into it and knew all the words and were there not just to be at the event, but they were there a lot. In fact, a couple of conversations that we had with some 20-somethings were that they recognized how lucky they were to be able to see some of these literally living legends, and recognizing the chance that they've got to see them, and the fact that there may not be too many more opportunities like that in the future. And it was funny too. A couple of conversations were, what was it like when Sgt. Pepper came out? What was it like when the Beatles broke up? And questions like that from the junior set to the senior circuit that a lot of us were. And it was kind of interesting playing sort of a guru to them, telling them about what those days were like to have lived through Beatlemania, and the fact that I saw, talked to a couple about actually seeing Pink Floyd with all the original members there with what was quite an elaborate show in 1975, and compared to the technology that Waters put on for the finale of that show, it was quite a difference 40 years later, something like that. So, but there were lots of young folks there that were seemed like they were really into music and appreciating the event for something other than just a festival, a spectacle. Were there to see the acts.
When you were there all 3 days for the weekend. Did you see any? For example, Paul was on Saturday and Neil Young was on first, and then Neil joined Paul and Paul did his set. But did you ever see the other artists anywhere in the crowd, in the audience, on the stage, like any of the other iconic acts? Did you witness, say, Bob Dylan or the Stones or Roger Waters of the Who while Paul was playing anywhere? Or was it just the 2 acts for each day?
It was just the 2 acts for each day, and I didn't notice any of the other acts kind of mingling in the crowd. There were some celebrities. Mick Fleetwood was seen in the audience several times. In fact, a couple of people thought I was Mick Fleetwood from the.
There is a resemblance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was going to say that. Yeah, really.
And a couple of times, some folks who had heard Mick Fleetwood was there came up and saw, said, "Are you?" And I said, "No, I'm not." But they were. I can understand that.
You could have
Facebook.
faked it. You could have faked it, Rick. You could have put on a British accent and said, "Oh, yeah."
Facebook recognition tags me as him sometimes, or vice versa.
That's funny.
No joke. That's pretty funny. I did run. Abe Laborio Jr. was walking around in the crowd. Talked with him for a while. Some familiar faces. We know that Drew Carey was in the pit all 3 days. I'm trying to think of, but there were several celebrity sightings within the group that we had. But as far as the majors, I didn't see Dylan sitting in the crowd chatting with the fans at all, or any of the other acts.
Now, I thought it was really a great idea for Paul to do the medley of A Day in the Life and Give Peace a Chance, the chorus of Give Peace a Chance, which he's done, for many years as part of his set list, and then for Neil Young to join him for that, because not everyone's aware that Neil has performed A Day in the Life in concert himself. So how did that come across, the two of them doing that together, in your opinion?
Well, it was really emotional, especially when they kicked into the Give Peace a Chance, and you could literally look around and see nothing but peace signs and people waving and being affected by that anthem of peace, and seeing that group embracing both the concert moment and the philosophy, the feelings that go with it. That was really something else.
Yeah. And Why Don't We Do It in the Road? I watched it online. A little bit surprised that Paul performed it while he played guitar, because you think of him with the piano doing that. Even though he's never done it live before, it's so piano based, and you think of him at the piano doing it. How did that come across to the crowd? Did everybody look at each other like, "Wow"?
Oh yeah, there was actually too. He was on bass for that song, or Why Don't We Do It? But there was a stunned look around a lot of the regulars. We were sitting there. There were 6 or 8 of us that had tickets together, and the looks on our faces was priceless for that moment, because anytime you get a surprise premiere tune like that, that's a bonus. But that particular tune, and with the mass of people all singing along, it was motivational. Why don't we do it in the road?
True. Yeah. How do you like Neil's lead guitar work on the song?
He has an interesting style, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's a great political answer.
It is the season, man.
What did you think of the Stones come together?
Well,
they have an interesting style too, don't they?
Yeah, they threw the glove down for Paul to pick up with that one, and that was a nice surprise, though. I like the Stones. I think the Stones are a great, gritty rock and roll band, and I enjoy. They've still got a lot of that club band in them. Why don't we do it in the road, or why don't we do Come Together, or I think they would rip into just about anything, and the fact that they again, not, I think every single one of the bands had an awareness of what all was going around them, so they probably thought maybe we should give a little nudge or a little nod to this other act that's going to follow us. So, it was funniest thing. Mick said Mick Jagger 2 or 3 times during their set, "Thanks to Bob Dylan for being our opening act," or "Thanks for Bob for warming up the crowd for us." And I just thought that was maybe a little slice to Dylan's status there. But Dylan was I thought Dylan was a perfect opener for the whole whole festival, whole event. But of course, with the opening song that has the lyric about everybody must get stoned, and I think everybody pretty much took that as
Yeah.
marching orders. Yeah,
Really.
but follow the instructions, and it was kick the whole. He did what I thought was a great set, good set list picks from him, because some of his shows lately have been a lot of cover, and sometimes his shows are kind of like a metronome, click 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 click. It's all kind of the same.
Yeah.
Same genre, same feel, but I thought that was a really good. He actually bordered on melodic a couple of times, so I enjoyed his set, and Stones burned it out.
And actually, Paul had another surprise because since the Stones were there that weekend,
Yes.
he brought back "I Want to Be Your Man."
Yep, Paul gave him a little answer song to that, and he said something about that. He certainly put an emphasis on the fact that we wrote this song for them, so a little slap back from Paul, but it had a good version too. It was closer to the Beatles recorded version of "I Want to Be Your Man" than he did perform that tune on the '93 tour, but it was a sort of a Bo Diddley, almost reggae version of that. But this was a straightforward rock version near the end of the show.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that his response would be an actual Stone song that.
Oh, me too.
You know, I thought,
Yeah.
was he going to do Satisfaction? You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
or We Love You? You know,
Oh yeah.
since I think he was on that, right?
Oh yeah. Got the legitimate
so-
corkscrew connection there.
Yeah.
That's true.
But oh well,
Yeah.
next time.
Right.
So
Was
shall
there
we?
any surprise amongst the crowd? I just want to ask if that there wasn't any, more cross-pollination between the six acts for that weekend.
Yeah, there were comments that the possibilities were there, so I think the expectations were there too. You know, as the second weekend when Rihanna came out with Paul to sing 4 or 5 seconds, which is another one that went over amazingly well at the Old Cella concert there as well, because I think Paul enjoyed saying, well, we played you the first song that we wrote a while ago, and then the most recent song that we just in the hit just on the charts last year or something like that, so he could really bookend his 50 plus year career on stage there too. But there were some comments about, why didn't Keith Richards come out for the big guitar duel for Golden Slumbers, the end type things, and potential was there. I just don't know whether what the details and arrangements, logistics for making those things happen were.
Right. Steve?
I was surprised, Rick, that he actually played a full set, because normally when he goes to these outdoor things, he usually cuts his sets down. Were you a little surprised at that?
Well, it seemed like he was giving us the full set and full effort.
Yeah.
That and I was kind of prepared for a somewhat shortened set, because it was a long day there. Neil Young played for a full 90 minutes to 2 hours or so, and it seemed like it at least. And I think there was some sort of curfew there too that Paul blew right through.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yes.
How many?
I know.
You said you'd seen the Who. You'd seen the Who
Oh yeah.
in the past. How many times did you see the Who?
Oh, dozens probably.
Dozens?
I
Really?
Yeah.
I saw them back then too. I think I've mentioned it here before. I was at and I know you've heard about this show. I was at the show at the Cow Palace when Keith passed out.
Oh yes.
Oh,
I've heard.
yeah.
Yes.
Is there a drummer in the house?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it wasn't me, but yeah, we were right over to the left side, near the left side of the stage. In fact, the video that's on YouTube of that which seems to have been shot pretty close to where I was standing, because that's kind of the angle I remember. And I remember Townsend asking, and we could hear Townsend very well. We could see him very well from where we were, and it was like, it was crazy, and a bunch of people rushed up there. I mean, hell, for one, I don't play the drums, so there's no way I was going there. But I remember a lot of people heading towards he pointed towards, the gate, and he said, go over there if you can play. And, a few people,
Wow.
I never saw Scott, whatever his name was, go over there. At least I don't remember, but, obviously I remember he played very well that night. So But I saw them that night. I saw them at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium in San Francisco in 1970, and I think I saw them one other time at Winterland. So yeah, I saw them. I didn't see them dozens, but I saw them a couple of times, and then I saw Pink Floyd. You said you saw them in 75. I saw them in, I think it was 71 or 72. And
wow.
When you saw them, did they do an ending with the fire, with the smoke and everything like that kind of scared the hell out of everybody with the skeletons and all that? Did they do that? You remember that?
I don't remember that, but that may not mean it didn't happen.
Yeah. There's another good political answer for you. Because
I do remember the intensity and the impression that the show made. Now, we were at a big outdoor stadium show, and they physically built a pyramid, and I think I remember a plane crashing into the pyramid at the end, and that was pretty shaking, but...
You saw them later than I did then, because I saw them before, as I recall, it was before Dark Side came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and because I remember when we heard the stuff that night, we didn't recognize it. Or it was new. I can't remember if it was really new, but I'm looking up here on what I'm online here and trying to see which... I don't remember what song they ended with, but they had these smoke pots at the sides of the stage, and they blew them all of a sudden, and there were these skeletons, and you could hear the whole audience freaking out because everybody shut their eyes in reaction to the light, and it was amazing. And I saw Dylan at the Bridge concert. That's the only time I've seen Dylan. So I have not seen the Stones. I have never ever seen the Stones.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, and at this point, I have to be honest. At this point, I won't. I would have seen them in I wanted to see them in the 70s, and I never did. And so
I saw them in 72 with Billy Preston on keyboard, Stevie Wonder.
I love the films and the recordings of those shows. There are some some of the best Stones bootlegs.
Oh, that era, they were clearly the world's greatest rock and roll band for those moments. No doubt about it.
Speaking of bootlegs, there is a recording of the first Desert Trip show, the McCartney show.
Mm-hmm.
And
what a show.
What a show.
The complete shows of all of them from the first weekend are up on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I have. That's not where I've seen them, but I have seen them, and I haven't seen the videos. I've just seen the audios. But the McCartney one's okay. It's not as good as some of the other shows I've heard, but as far as quality goes, I mean, it's all there. So.
One thing mentioned in the Who a minute ago, I will say that in these most recent little news clips about Pete saying that he doesn't really care about performing live in the last few days, well, he was certainly enjoying himself a lot that night in that Desert Trip. He was dancing and bouncing around, lots of energetic windmills, and very, very. If he was acting like he was having a good time, he's a damn good actor.
Well, in fact, that brings up a good point, because I remember how he was back then. You would too. I mean, he was absolutely superhuman back in the 70s. I mean, it was incredible, the stuff between the jumping and the windmills, and I mean, and how the hell he's still alive, surviving after that is absolutely, and with all those shows, is absolutely amazing. Sure. I mean, you say he's still doing windmills and jumping and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. He's airborne 15% of the show.
Oh my God. Oh my. That was the one thing, and I don't know that I mentioned this here before. If I have and people remember it, I'm sorry. The night I saw them in San Francisco in 1970, Bill Graham introduced them one by one, and I remember he introduced John Entwistle first. Then he introduced Daltrey. Then he introduced Moon. And Moon, of course, couldn't get through it without making some smart-ass remark and screwing around, and he had the whole crowd laughing. And then finally, and they were all in the dark, by the way, so they opened up spotlights in each one of them. And he introduced Townsend last, and he said, and finally the king, Peter Townsend. And Townsend had one of these, if you remember, for the older people listening, one of those imperial margarine crowns on his head.
Sure.
The whole audience just started screaming. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, and launched into, I think it was My Generation. And but yeah, I'll never forget that. That was just absolutely amazing. And they put on, the few times I saw them, they were just absolutely spectacular. They were just amazing.
Oh, they never. I've never walked away from the Who show feeling like I didn't get the full energy and full money's worth from their show. I will say one thing about their show though. They were about the only band with the set list that was fairly much their standard set list. I don't think they probably didn't feel like they had to step up their game to play that gig. But they pretty much came out and they did a full 2-hour set with the 2-hour plus set with them too.
Was Zach on drums? Who's on drums? Who's on drums for them?
Yeah. Zach Starkey's on drums with the Who.
Okay. See,
Yes.
I haven't seen them in. I think the last time I saw them was, it was at Oakland Coliseum. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was at least a decade ago. But I think Zach was on it. It was after Kenny Jones, I think, and
maybe Simon Phillips.
It might have been Simon Phillips. I can't remember for sure now. But I didn't know if Zach was still there. Go ahead, Al. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem. Actually, to go off topic a little bit.
I think we already done that.
Yeah, I think we already.
The last time Rick was here, because you just mentioned a little while ago about your health situation, and the last time you were here, you did, bring us up to date, and I thought maybe you should bring us up to date on where things stand now, because there's a lot of your friends who I know listen, so we probably should get an update.
Well, I'd be glad to say thanks over the airwaves here to so many of you guys and all the folks that have been so supportive of me through this little, what I call distraction for the last year or so. Just to a recap, I got diagnosed about a year and a half ago now with stage 4 thyroid cancer. Went through chemo, radiation, and 2 different surgeries to get that bastard taken care of. And I just got my 1 year all clear checkup a couple of weeks ago, and the support that was pouring onto my Facebook page, my mailbox, my telephone, any way of communicating, and all the visits and support that I got from so many people through, primarily through the Music Connections. This the Fans on the Run group, the other Music Connections, and all my friends from, for the last 62 years now. It seems to me like the common core there is music, and the doctors and the technicians that were working on me through the treatments, they were just amazed at the outpouring of all the support that I was getting from so many of my music friends. So I just take this chance to say thank you individually out there, because I tried to put as much thanks as I could on Facebook. But when I would read them back, it always seemed like a Grammys award speech, saying, I want to thank the songwriters, the producers, the little people out there, my fan club. I would like to say, I would like to be able to say thank you to anyone that's hearing this, and I try to say it in person to as many folks as I'm meeting, because I'm back out on the run, and I'm very, very fortunate to have had such a wonderful healthcare professional team behind me, a family to support me locally here, and such a wide range of all across the world. It's kind of weird that that I got that, and it worked. So thanks again. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm returning to very good health here. I'm very fortunate with that in many, many ways. Thank you, guys. Give me a chance to say.
That's great. Now you mentioned you happened to mention running into Drew Carey at Desert Trip, but that was actually not the first time you saw Drew on your trip, was it?
No, we were eating lunch. I know, actually, we were eating breakfast at a diner that was just a few blocks away from CBS Studios, and had talked to one of the waitresses there that said that Drew Carey comes in there all the time, and our hotel was right beside that, and we just happened to be staying there. Looked over and said, "Well, that's Drew Carey sitting right beside us at the bar where we were having breakfast." So he looked like he was going to be friendly, and just slid over beside him and asked him if he was going to go to the desert trip, because the waitress had actually told us that he was planning on going to the desert trip show himself, and we just chatted about that. He was so nice, so friendly. We talked about music, electronic music, the old stuff too, and the fact that he was going to be in the pit standing and rocking all 3 days. He said he'd been to a party the night before with Keith Richards and Ron Wood and Joe Walsh, and oh, by the way, Ringo Starr, and was hoping that Ringo was going to come out with Paul. That was one little, I don't want to say disappointment, but with it so close to Ringo's home out in L.A., it would have been really wonderful if Ringo had popped in just for a couple of na-na-na-nas for the Hey Jude finale or something.
Yeah.
Huh. Meeting Drew was a thrill out there. We saw a couple of stars while we were out visiting in L.A. as well. Saw a very, very pregnant Mila Kunis out there, and some others too. We were only in L.A. for a few days before the show, but meeting Drew Carey was a thrill. Find out he was a Beatle fan too. That was cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I guess maybe it was just you had at least a couple of shots taken of you on the set of The Price is Right.
Well, we went to the Price is Right show just for the taping of the show.
Right.
And
okay.
They have a photo op set up outside the show there with the wheel, so you can make it appear that you are going to be on the show.
Okay.
But I've signed a confidentiality form and that's you laugh, but there's about a 12-page confidentiality form that you have to sign.
Really?
Just as an audience member, and just in case you get picked, you can't disclose any information about winnings or losings on the stage. Should you have gotten picked, the episode that I attended, it was going to air January 10th. So if you want to see what I can't talk about, watch the Drew Carey Price is Right show that day.
Okay, that explains it, because I was almost under the impression that you were selected to be on the show.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the intention of trying to leave that impression.
You sly devil, you.
Yeah, really.
Well, and if you'll read all the captions and all the posting information, I was suitably vague with the way I described it.
I remember. Damn.
I enjoy having a laugh with Facebook stuff sometimes, all the time.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
It's gotten a little annoying lately. I spend less and less time there, it seems like, because I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's an A side and a B side to the record being played over and over in the news lately.
Yes,
and
indeed.
I'm ready for
two more weeks, and we'll be done with this.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. I have to admit I've been part of that. I'm sorry.
Were there any Americans on the? Oh yeah, I guess Dylan for president. He would qualify as
I guess
desert trip part.
Since you mentioned Dylan, we should touch on one of our other topics. Let me read you the lead of a 1967 New York Times review.
Oh.
The lead is, "It will be a good joke on us all if in 50 years or so Dylan is regarded as a significant figure in English poetry." 1967. So I guess we could probably have given him the one remaining year to see if it's true, but it turns out that the Nobel Academy does consider him a significant poet figure in American poetry. Obviously, that was announced in between the two Desert Trip shows, so you wouldn't have known when you saw him that he was going to be a Nobel laureate. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think he has always written some of the most intriguing, mysterious, and thought-provoking lyrics, and that's one of the things I like about him, the lyric and the wordplay that he does. So if I hate to say our generation has got to point to one, I can't really think of a more appropriate candidate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I should hasten to add that I didn't write that review.
Who did?
Donald Hanahan. Donald Hanahan was for many years the chief classical music critic of the New York Times. So I don't know why he was reviewing this, but he was reviewing the Don't Look Back film for some reason.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think it had, if I remember correctly, it was the Don't Look Back was actually not released until sometime in '67. So that probably was the
right.
When it premiered.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's been a bit of debate on the internet about whether Dylan is an appropriate figure for this award, and I've been surprised to see actually some of the negative comment, especially among people who are more sort of avant-garde types who have felt that by choosing really a popular figure, the Nobel Academy is or whatever they're called, is making it more difficult for people who do less overtly popular and more difficult stuff. But I don't know. I think he deserves it myself. I was thrilled to hear it.
And the fact that he didn't acknowledge it got people pissed off too.
Apparently, he still hasn't.
That's kind of right. That's kind of stupid, I think. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, gee whiz. I mean, Dylan is Dylan. What would you expect?
He acts in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he certainly does.
I guess the next question
He's got that mysterious thing going for him, and this may kind of bridge that gap for his self-perception, maybe. And if I acknowledge that, I won't have that distance anymore. Could be a thought behind that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there are any awards he hasn't gotten yet, actually, at this point. That was probably the last one.
Yeah.
Actually, Stop the Presses, he has acknowledged it. He mentioned on his website. He mentioned it it says, I'm looking at a story from the Spin website. It says his website's listing for the lyrics, 1961 to 2012, a compendium of lyrics for every song he's written through 2012, now features the headline, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Well, that's not him acknowledging it. That's right. Columbia Records basically acknowledging it.
Or whoever's publishing the book.
Right. Well, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever. The question now is whether he will turn up at the ceremony and what he'll say. I mean, his acceptance speeches have been a little strange sometimes.
Right.
I'm betting on something like, my daddy always told me that when you walk down the street and you see a car, smile at the stop sign. Something like that.
Thank you very much.
That way.
Yeah. Either that or he'll go on for 45 minutes like he did at what was it? Was it the Songwriters Hall of Fame, or
did he?
He was inducted into a couple of years ago, and he went on for 45 minutes about the music industry and took down a few people. But I don't remember the exact occasion. So who knows?
Yeah. We also wanted to acknowledge the death of Bobby V, the Beatles connection being that they did Take Good Care of My Baby on their Decca audition. Anyone have any observations about Bobby V?
Well, also, I'm fortunate to know this because I'm a huge fan of Mark Lewison's The Beatles Live book. But one of my favorite things to read is a list of all the songs the Beatles used to perform, which he does year by year. And they also performed another Bobby V song in concert, and that was the song Sharing You, which George Harrison sang lead to. as he sang lead to Take Good Care of My Baby. And both those songs, by the way, were Goffin and King songs.
Right.
So, so there's more of a connection. And I was just reading online, not being aware of this, that Bobby Vee was also at A Ready, Steady, Go, one of the sessions that the Beatles were on in '64 with them.
And Michael Lynch also mentioned online that they used a Bobby Vee recording of She Loves You on the compilation record by Buchanan and Greenfield called The Invasion. So they didn't use the Beatles version, they used Bobby Vee's version.
Oh, yes. Right. Yeah.
So thank you, Michael.
That's very true. And it's interesting because around the time that the Beatles hit America, Bobby had he had a self-contained backup band, and I believe they were called the Strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And in early '64, he recorded a single, and I'm forgetting the title. Something like, I think I'll make her mine. Something like that. We can look it up later on. But anyway, it's very much in the Mersey beat, kind of musical wheelhouse. It's very, if you want to call it that, Beatlesque, or certainly Mersey beat-esque. So obviously he's one of the artists that visited one of the American artists like Roy Orbison and Gene Pitney and others who visited England during 1963 and saw the phenomenon beginning to build. And so, right about the time that they hit America, he comes out with definitely a Beatles sounding record, although it didn't do very well, but that's
I'm actually looking online here and on YouTube, and there is the single "I'll Make You Mine," and the B-side, which I've heard before. The B-side, it's called "She's Sorry," and that's very Beatley.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely like an early '60s Beatles song.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Bobby was one of the many artists in America that was affected by the British invasion, and the hits became less once 1964 hit, and the Beatles led the British invasion here.
Right. Well, they only had one other really big hit after 1963, and that was all the way in '67. Come back when you grow up.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1961 was the year that I became more than just a casual listener to rock and roll. And records like "Take Good Care of My Baby" and "Run to Him" were major favorites of mine during that summer and fall. And the Night Has a Thousand Eyes in the early part of '63.
Mm-hmm.
I
was just going to mention that one. Yeah, that was a great song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, "Run to Him" has always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
Anyone ever run into anyone who was as fanatical about Bobby Vee as we are about the Beatles?
No.
I have.
You have?
Yes, I have.
Oh, wow.
It's a cellist named Julian Lloyd Webber, brother of yes.
Really?
He is just like, he loves Bobby Vee, and at one point I was able to find, believe it or not, an unreleased bunch of Bobby Vee, a session that was unreleased that I think he might have recorded with the Crickets. It's either the Crickets or the Jordanaires. It was someone else's backing band who was
probably the Crickets, because he had a couple of albums with them.
Yeah,
right.
So this was all unreleased stuff, and so I was able to provide the actual talented member of the Lloyd Webber family with some unreleased material. And couldn't resist that,
No.
The things Bobby Vee makes possible that you never would have imagined. But
wow.
An actual Bobby Vee freak. It's very funny. When he first mentioned it, I thought, well, wait, really, Bobby Vee? You're fanatical about Bobby Vee? But hey, everyone has fans, and everyone has.
This is true.
Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah. So, shall we move on to the next topic, which is the unauthorized Ringo compilation? Everyone ready for that fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the most fanatical of us about that is Steve. So tell us all about it, Steve.
Well, I mean, there's not that much to tell. I mean, I've printed the track listing, and it's nothing that anyone who doesn't have all the Ringo CDs won't have, and it's not EQ'd. So I mean, there's some sound level problems on a couple of the songs. One in particular, I can't remember which one, comes in really loud, and the earlier ones are a little soft. But I mean, the point that I made in the write up that I did about it was that the music is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get in trouble with one person in this group when I say it's better than pure McCartney.
I wonder who.
Because it really is. I mean, the music is great. I mean, I was listening to it, and I really did not expect to be. I put it on just to listen to it, to see what it was kind of like, and I really wasn't expecting much, and the quality of the songs were just great. I mean, I really don't think Ringo gets enough credit, for how good this stuff is. It's down to earth. There's a lot of early rock and roll references into it. Of course, he goes a little overboard on the Beatle references, the Beatle lyrics. I mean, that's we know he does that, and that it does get to be a little too much. But I mean, the fact that he's got all the other Beatles playing on his song on the songs. I mean, it's just a really good compilation, and I think it's unfortunate that I know he's talked about putting one out himself. He supposedly had one in the hopper for a while. I mean, that he's been working on. It's too bad that this got out before he did. Although maybe it'll help move him to get his out, because
I didn't hear about him planning anything like this. I know that he mentioned an Apple box set, kind of like what George released, but that's only the first 4 or 5 years of his career, if you're talking about Apple.
I had thought it was. He talked to Chris Carter, and I thought he had said he was going to do a whole career anthology.
I thought he was referring to strictly the Apple years, kind of like George.
So, Steve, is this a bootleg, or is it Russian, or is it both?
It's Russian. It's an unauthorized Russian, but it looks pretty much like a real. I mean, it was on Amazon for a day or so, and it still is on eBay. It wasn't on eBay when I looked a couple of days ago. It's still there. You can find it. It's called Ringo's Greatest Hits. It's a Russian unauthorized. I guess you could say it's a bootleg. The graphics are beautiful. It's got pictures you probably have seen before. There's no new pictures. The picture on the cover is the one from Rolling Stone where he's standing in the big star on the beach with his arms spread. And you couldn't see it originally in the pictures that I saw on Amazon, but the printing at the bottom of the track listing on the back side is in Russian. I couldn't see that from because it's so tiny. And then, but what really gives it away is the track listings say Dick 1 and Dick 2. But the tracks they chose are all really good. The only time it falls off is say like in the last quarter of the second disc. There's a few things I would have changed. But I mean, other than that, it's a great compilation. It really, really is. And I just hope that at some point he does something like this, because he really deserves it.
But even more so than pure McCartney, why on earth, since it is an unauthorized Russian album, as you said, Steve, not EQ'd, why on earth would anyone who has any sort of hardcore Ringo fan who has everything, why on earth would they buy something like this when all they have to do is simply, because it's the
Put it
track
together.
listing, yeah.
Obviously, you can do that, but the thing that surprised me is that the prices for it that I've seen have not been bootleg prices. Where bootleg prices, and I think Alan would agree with me, are usually
Actually,
not cheap.
Bootleg prices these days are free. I can't remember the last time I paid for a bootleg. Well, except for some of the HMC things, but yeah, bootlegs. Yeah, they're just.
Well, if you're talking about, I know what you're talking about there. I'm talking about specific. I mean, I haven't seen anything as cheap as this. I mean, there was one dealer, a Russian dealer I saw on eBay that had it for $5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty close to free.
That may be why you would buy it.
Well, that didn't count. That didn't count
shipping from Russia.
Right,
I
but
see.
I mean, it's still. I mean, but I'm just saying, even the prices that I've seen have not been extraordinary. That's what.
It would be nice if his entire career span could get a little more recognition, because you're right, there are some gems in his repertoire there that the general public has probably never even gotten exposed to, much less got an appreciation for.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Well, except that.
Go ahead.
Except that in August of 2007, Ringo returned to Capitol, and they released a really good 20 track and anthology compilation, whatever you want to call it, called Photograph, the very best of Ringo Starr. And they were, and this especially with the ongoing success of One, they were expecting big things of this album. They did a good amount of promotion for it, and it the first week out it hit 130 on Billboard's album chart, and then dropped completely off the chart. In other words, it was certainly a failure, and it's the problem is that regardless of what the quality of the music is, Ringo does not sell records.
Product, right?
And in fact, Ken and I had a discussion, I think on Friday, on Facebook about this, because he's of a mind where he thinks that they should put together a 2-disc compilation, that would bring things right up to the present day. The problem with that is it doesn't, especially since now that Universal is basically in charge, since they are the parent company now of both Capitol and Apple, is that they're just not going to go for something like that. Not in this current music business. Where, I mean, Paul told the story a couple of in the Rolling Stone interview, I think it was, of being told that Pure McCartney in its first week out had charted quite high, and asked about sales, and they told him 36,000, which is pathetic. So that's the new reality.
Yeah.
Well, can I stick my 2 cents in?
Please.
Go ahead.
First of all, regardless of everything that you've said, I just think that in general, regardless of what era you're living in, it's always important for any major artist, and I do consider Ringo to be a major artist because of his stature, everything that he's achieved. Every major artist to put out a compilation if you can, every 10 years or so, especially if the artist is still very active putting out new music, so you can update it. And contrary to what you were saying, Al, and going back to our conversation on Pure McCartney, you kept thinking about this as being aimed to the hardcore Beatle fan.
No, we don't.
Compilations are not geared towards hardcore fans. Compilations and greatest hits albums are geared towards casual fans and people who want to be introduced to an artist who they're not really familiar with most of their catalog. They want to hear the hits, maybe go a little bit deeper into album cuts. So something like this is more suitable. Now,
And
realistically,
convenient.
What's that?
And convenient
Yeah,
to have
sure.
it all in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to advise someone who's just getting into Paul McCartney's solo career, what to start with, this is just like the conversation with Pure McCartney. I wouldn't start them on the first McCartney album. I wouldn't start them on Band on the Run. I would start them on a greatest hits, whether it's Wingspan or Pure McCartney, because it's a good cross section of all the decades and all the music that he released. Same thing with Ringo. Ringo has continued to put out albums, say once every 2 years. He's released 4 studio albums since Photograph. Okay. So, and probably he's going to have another one out next year. He's still very active as far as putting out new music. And, you know, so much of his recent material, as you were saying, Steve, on that second disc of this Russian compilation, is really very strong. In my own personal opinion, I know I've said this a number of times, with the exception of the Ringo album, I think From Time Takes Time On is the best music he's put out in his solo career for the most part. I think he's had a renaissance period, you know, from 1992, from that album on. And there should be compilations that have some of that material in there so people can know what some of his best material is. So regardless of how it sells, there's always got to be something out there that's in print. And if I was a brand new Beatle fan or I wanted to investigate Ringo, I'm not going to start by saying, oh, let me try Ringo's Rotogravure. That's not the way I'm going to be going about his solo career. I'd want something that encompasses his entire career. So the purpose behind a compilation is far more important to me than the sales, because over time, the greatest hits or compilations will probably outsell anything else from Ringo's solo career, or most artists' career for that matter. So I just think that the purpose behind a compilation is far more important over the long run, you know, than the immediate sales. And I wish, whether it's realistic or unrealistic, that the record company wouldn't be thinking solely in terms of sales.
But problem is, it's a business. I mean, we've got a marketing man here in Rick, and you know, it's as I said, the Photograph collection is exactly that kind of collection that you would give to somebody as a great sampler of, or you would point somebody toward as a great sampler of Ringo's career up to 2007.
Right.
And nobody bought it. You know, virtually nobody bought it.
And by the way, you said you saw promotion behind it. I didn't.
Yeah, I did. Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, I heard a radio special on it. I didn't see anything on television.
Yeah, there was because they were kind of thinking that this would be kind of like, you know, Ringo's one, and it just did not happen. And especially now, since with Capitol and Apple owned by a mega conglomerate, they're just, no matter how noble it would be to put out an anthology every few years, they're just not going to do it. I mean, that Icon collection that came out a couple of years ago, again, same thing. It just disappeared without a trace.
Yeah, but that really wasn't that good a collection anyway. I mean, that was just kind of a tossed, something tossed out. There wasn't any real purpose behind it.
And there was no promotion behind that.
Right. And one thing I was going to mention is that I'm looking at the track listing for Photograph. The only thing that's not on the Russian album that's on Photograph is the Act Naturally duet with Buck Owens. So there is one track difference. But the Russian thing has a lot of, has several tracks that the Photograph does not, starting with Choose Love, Me and You, Liverpool 8, Peace Dream, Walk With You, and even has,
well, obviously it covers the
right.
material from the years since then.
But still, even earlier, there's the Photograph only has 20 tracks up until Fading In and Fading Out, which is on the Russian second disc. That's the 35th track on the
right, but
Russian
it's a very photograph is a very strong 20-track collection.
Well, yeah, and like
sure
I said,
was.
but again, what really is impressive about the Russian thing is the quality of the music all the way through, and I'm talking about even the later stuff. So not just the early stuff.
Right.
So I mean, I think as I wrote on my blog on that I think he doesn't get the credit for the great music, and I did take a little swipe at the others when I said that they go off on tangents where Ringo hasn't gone off on tangents on that kind of stuff, and even when he has, he's kept his feet on the ground, and I think that's really evident here. So
this really is a sad reflection of the times. And I'm only going to bring up this one other thing because when we were at the Fest for Beatle fans this past year, I know we were on a panel with Tom Frangione, and for some reason we brought up the George Harrison compilation of Let It Roll, songs by George Harrison. And most people were very disappointed with that. George Harrison deserves at least a 2-disc set of his solo career. And he's never had any, not one. I mean, the Best of Dark Horse was okay, but it only encompassed music from the Dark Horse label. It didn't have the first 5 years of his solo career. So as far as something that's encompassed his entire solo career, the Best of George Harrison was a joke.
Yes.
Half of it were the Beatle recordings that George wrote. And, even on Let It Roll, they had to include 3 Beatles songs that he did live at the concert for Bangladesh. So as far as just solo material from 1970 on, unless you want to include Wonderwall music and on, but there's never been anything on George.
Right.
That represents, a great compilation, say 2 discs, and he certainly warrants that. And for the mere fact that Ringo's now had 18 studio albums, I don't think 2 discs is asking too much. But like I just said, it's a sad reflection that.
Well, how much interference or how much influence or interference would the different record labels have to put a compilation like that together?
I was just going to say the rumor
Except in Russia.
at the time about the George Harrison was that it was supposed to be 2 discs. And there were problems that prevented that. So and that's too bad. I mean, that it really did fall down. So I don't know.
Are you sure that's the reason? Because it's my understanding that Universal now just covers everything with George.
Yeah, but this was how many years ago?
Right. This was what maybe about a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
2009. 2009.
Oh, okay.
That's when it was. So,
But at that point, Capitol and Apple were still autonomous.
Mm-hmm. We could talk about this probably for another hour about go back to the debate about compilations, and I don't. But the point I want to make again is that the Ringo's music well deserves more praise than it gets, and I think it's not the compilation itself. It's the fact that his body of work doesn't get the praise that it deserves, and that is proof of it. And I hope at some point he puts out something that that takes care of that. So,
but the problem is that if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it,
right?
Right. The fact is, people just, his records, whether they're the new albums or a compilation, his records do not sell. The man has not had a hit album in 40 years.
So if you follow that logic, then he probably shouldn't even record new albums by himself anyway.
That's, no, not necessarily.
If you're doing it to move product, no. If you're doing it to embrace your muse, yes.
Yeah.
And I think he's embraced his muse very well in the last, like you said, since Time Takes Time. This has been some very unique and driven music from Ringo. I don't think he's making product. I think he's making the music that he wants to make. And yes, that should be appreciated, and because there is some really good tunes and good fun stuff in there. I'd like to see him do a tour with just tunes from the 91 up.
I agree with that, and I think
that was
also
for
that,
us.
I think we're all kind of spoiled by the idea that the Beatles sold as many records as they did in a time when people bought records, and I think that, the fact
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah,
sell some. They're not going to sell as
different time.
many as the Beatles, but they're going to sell some because a lot of us want to hear what he has to say now, and
Sure.
and I think that they just shouldn't be. By they, I mean the record companies and also maybe us and whatever. I think just shouldn't be so hung up on what the bottom sales figure finally is going to be. Not only do they sell things, but they also sell things over time. You know,
Hmm.
and
That's what I was saying.
the record industry, everything is changing now, and it's a really difficult time for them. I understand that, but in a way, it's almost like the pop industry is like what the classical industry used to be. What they used to say when they got really embarrassing sales figures, like 5,000 copies a year of a classical record, is that these are catalog items. They're selling slowly now, but they sell for 20, 30, however many years, and a lot of those old classical things are still selling because the people are legendary and new people come to admire their work over time and want to start, hearing the things they did, long after they've died. And, maybe pop catalog stuff is like that now too, because everyone's downloading it free or streaming it or whatever. But I mean, people obviously have to continue doing what they do, or else what's the point? You won't have any musicians doing anything if it's
That's right. Yeah. And the mere fact that Ringo's doing what he's doing because he loves it first, that's what we should be celebrating as well. That he's
Hmm.
doing this because he still enjoys making new music.
And I think
He's still growing as an artist, as far as I'm concerned.
And I think the All-Star Band thing plays into that too, the Muse thing, because I mean he's having fun out there, playing live with people he enjoys. So I think, and that's part of the same thing. So God bless him, and hope he can continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So okay, I think we've touched on a whole lot of topics, and it's been another quickly moving hour. And thanks so much, Rick, for coming on and giving us your...
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thanks for having me back. I will say a couple more things I was going to say about the desert trip when we were talking about it. It was one of the best organized events that I've ever attended.
Mm-hmm.
All the getting in, getting out, getting to your seat, getting back and forth from food, and no hassles with the logistics of the show. It was really well done that way. And I don't recall seeing one person-to-person issue. There was no pushing and shoving. There was no line jumping. There was no personality issues going on in the entire weekend that I saw going on or heard about at all. So if they were trying to recreate that 3 days of peace, love, and music, I think that was a very successful event out there, and I really enjoyed talking about the desert trip on your show here. Thanks for having me so much, guys.
Okay.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you again.
Rick.
So, for those of you out there who want to contact us, you can write to us, send us an email at thingswesaidtodayradioshow@gmail.com. We're happy to hear comments, criticism, suggestions, and especially praise. You can you can follow us on Twitter. We're at thingswesaidfab. We have a Facebook page, Things We Said Today, Beatles Radio Fans. And you can write directly to me on Facebook at either Alan Cozen or Alan Cozen Remixed. I noticed that there was a Things We Said Today remixed, but it had no followers and no people. So it's, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll have to build them up.
Yeah. So, Ken, how do people get in touch with you, and what have you got going on your show and your contests and things?
Well, they can always write to me at my email address, which is everylittlething@att.net. My website is kenmichaelsradio.com. I do have weekly Beatles trivia, in which you can win one of 9 prizes every week. And as we had 2 very special guests on our last show, Glenn Burtnick and Bob Berger of the Weaklings, a.k.a. Lefty and Zeke of the group, I am giving away their new album on CD called Studio 2, and all 4 members have signed it. And I do believe pretty soon we may be giving away some Weaklings releases here on this show. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And also, I just did a recent Every Little Thing show with Jude Kessler as my special guest. If you want to find out what radio stations carry the show, you can go to my website and go to the page that says Every Little Thing. It lists all the different radio stations and all the broadcast times when it airs the show. Judy was a great guest on our show not long ago. She's the author of several John Lennon books, narrative books. And so if you want to catch that show, go to that page, the Every Little Thing page.
Okay. And Steve, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, let me first say that for anyone wanting to listen to the show, we have you can download all of our shows at BeatlesExaminer.podbean.com. We're also on YouTube. Just search for Things We Said Today, Beatles Radio. You can get a hold of me at BeatlesExaminer@gmail.com. I have my own personal Facebook page, and I'll warn you that up until the election, I will be doing. You may find a political post there occasionally, and but I'm anyway. But you can talk about Beatles topics, and I swear there won't be anything else at my Beatles page, Beatles News and Commentary on Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter under my name at Steve Marinucci, and I am always happy to hear from you if we've gotten some comments about the show, and we really appreciate them, and we notice that the number of downloads is taking off, and we really, really, really appreciate your comments and your listening, and tell your friends.
Okay, and Al?
Okay, you can contact me on Facebook at Al Sussman, on Twitter at ASUSS49, also through Beatle Fan Magazine, and I'm holding in my hand the brand new issue of Beatle Fan, which is jam-packed. I figured since we have three longtime members of the Beatle fan family here, I should definitely briefly talk about the new issue, which, as I said, is jam-packed with coverage of 8 days a week of the Beatles live at the Hollywood Bowl, the Beatles in World War II, et cetera, et cetera. And it's led off by a great piece by Alan, kind of an expanded piece of an expanded version of the piece that he did for the
Wall Street Journal.
For the Wall Street Journal.
Yep.
Okay, that was it. Right, exactly. And and if I would say if you want to, if you've been thinking about getting Beatle Fan, this would be the issue to start with. www.beatlefan.com. You can order a single issue, or you can subscribe at the website.
Okay, and Rick, people can find you on Facebook too, right?
That's right.
Do you have any other websites or anything?
Or I can also recommend the Fans on the Run page on Facebook too. That's lots of fun.
Okay. So, for Steve Marinucci and Ken Michaels and Al Sussman and Rick Glover, I'm Alan Kozin, thanking you for listening, and we'll see you next time.